This is Hallicrafters Rehabs. Welcome back. So, last week was pretty preoccupied, but then we're starting to get things out of the house, my dad's house, and this is a regulator clock that was sitting in the offices of Waldensian Hosiery Mills Incorporated in Valdese from I don't know when until maybe the 50s and to maybe the 50s or the 60s. And we'll find out more about it, I hope, when we put it together. The spring is wound up tight. Now, if you're a radio restorer, you've learned all kinds of skill sets that can be applied to other things, like clocks, for example. And a lot of things that we repurpose for restoring radios, one of the best repurposers or skilled people is Don at Restore Old Radios. I've had so many good ideas come from him. Particularly, I think it's his wife that does crafts, and I may have seen that somewhere in one of his videos, but at any rate, again, he's repurposing things from other skill sets to restore radios, and now we're going to use some of the techniques that we use for radios to make a clock work. So, first thing we've got to do is take it apart, and I'm using jeweler's screwdrivers, and we're just going to remove this regulator window here. That looks like a nail. That's really ugly. There's going to be stuff like that everywhere. I think what I'll do is I'll take it from the other side here. We'll worry about getting the nail out later. It's been worked on, I think, by the shop at the mill, as we called it. Probably more than once, as we will see. I think this clock sat in the entranceway. It was a pretty small office area for the factory in Valdese. And this sat in either, I don't think the receptionist was actually there. Maybe she was. Doyle. I remember her name from way back. We'll put these screws right here until I lose them. Okay. So this comes out, or rotates out, because you got to have to wind the clock. We can't actually, I see solder in here, which was used to, I think, repair probably cheap, put together metal construction back in the day. When we take this ring off, and that will allow us to take the glass face off and see how it's, and we're probably going to have to do some work on the wood to, I'm not sure what to do, maybe fill it in order to give it bite again, or use a bigger screw, or whatever it is. That's what they usually do in these days. Let's get a stronger screwdriver. There's only 4 screws I see holding this retainer ring over the face. And now it's coming, as I loosen this, that's just popping right out. It's not even attached to anything. I think it was one time soldered to that retainer ring. So we will pick a different approach for that, maybe drill out and put in screws and mount it separately than the retainer ring. the hinge here looks in good shape. It's just they had it soldered. That was a nice idea to fix it and make it reconditioned maybe decades ago. We'll find out, maybe we'll see a label on the other side of the clock and we'll find out how old this thing really is. Okay. Now the hands come out, they just screw out, I think. I'm gonna need to look at that very carefully. Well, yeah, that's the way it comes off. We're gonna have to take it off that way. All right, come back in a minute. I get my eyesight. Okay. Better glasses in. So this just screws out very slowly and delicately. Here we go. It's just a piece of glass or plastic or something like that. But it's got a thread in it. And then up comes the hands. There's a little, looks like a little, can't really show it. If I put it over here, yeah. There's a washer here. There's some really ugly, crude grease or oil that we're gonna replace with something better. The minute hand comes first, and the hour hand just comes right off the sleeve second. And on the second sleeve, normally it comes off here. You just ease it like you would a tube. There we go. It's got a, now that's there. And now we can take the face off. And there's the mechanism. And the spring, which is all wound up, and really ugly grease in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this out, this mechanism out, and then we're going to clean all that grease off, and you'll be surprised, or maybe not, at what I use to clean that grease off. And that may be all you need to do to make the clock work. This may turn out to be simpler because they didn't know, well, first of all, they didn't have access to some of the chemicals and tools that we have today. All right, these are the screws that hold the mechanism in. It's not a very complicated mechanism. I'm really sure that this grease and its age behind this grease is such that that's the whole issue with whether this thing's going to work or not. All right. Yeah, it's just all bound up and really cruddy grease. So it's going to make this pretty easy to do. We're going to get this wood out of the way. And I need to get a few tools here and we'll get to work. Well, this is kind of surprising to me that I would think of this, but quite frankly, the discovery of cruddy old bad, it was grease. It was a kind of grease, and maybe that was okay. It made it work good for a while, but what do you do to remove grease? Well, dishwashing detergent. Plus an ultrasonic cleaner. So I've got hot water in there and dishwashing detergent, and we're going to see how much of that stuff just comes right off. I can see already the main spring, or maybe that was just my imagination, but things are going to loosen up pretty good, I think. So we'll go with that. Then we'll surprise you with a few other ingredients before we get this thing done. So we'll come back to this later. I don't know how many times I'll do this. I've got it set on 15 minutes. But we'll see how long it takes to get all that grease off. Okay, so while this thing's been cooking, I've been working on polishing up the brass pendulum, and just using, like I do with other things, very fine grit sandpaper on this, but no sandpaper on this brass. I just use cadmium polish, actually, kind of the chrome polish that we've used on chassis before, and I'm still working on it, but it's already cleaned up pretty nice using an electric toothbrush. So let's see how this is working now. First thing I notice is that the spring has gotten more even all around. Oh, and it's very pliable right now. Oh yes. I don't know if you can see this, but the spring is now nicely pliable. And it's wanting to click back and forth. Let's see what we can do with the actual pendulum. It slides through. You can clean the wetness off my hands. Okay. So we'll slide this through wherever it went. Where did it go? There it is. I have not cleaned this pendulum stay for adjustment. It's a very small part, and you do not want to lose it. As Rod C says, unobtainium. There we go. Alright, so that's right here. Wow, that spring has come to life, man. When we get the moisture out of there, we use some cleaner or something. We'll use a hair dryer, actually. So let's see how well it wants to. Oh wow. Just like that. So getting that grease out, I think I probably still need to work on that grease. In these joints and everything, somebody greased it up real nice. And that was fine 50 years ago, but the grease is degraded. A lot of it's come out. It's discolored the water nicely. So that's good. But everything seems like it's working. Look how that spring now has pretty much, it is, I think that's intentional because the anchor is right here. So you're not going to have a perfectly round spring at that point, but it's, yeah, it's springy. We just keep working. I think I'm going to go ahead and run it another 15 minutes or so just to get the last of whatever is in it. And then I can spend that time on this pendulum. And then we'll go through what it takes to, it'd be the same for variable capacitor or anything else. You want to rinse it real good, and then you want to dry it real good. Then you want to do some specialty chemicals for cleaning that we know about in radio and electronics that leave no residue, and then we'll put a surprise lubricant on it. I'm having a difficult time getting this in focus, but it says the Sessions Clock Company, Forestville, Connecticut. The Sessions Clock Company made clocks from between 1930 and of this type up to World War II, I think. And so it probably sat in the office for 20 or 30 years, from the 30s to the 60s, when Waldensian Hosiery Mills merged with Alba Waldensian. So this has got some really cruddy grease still down in here. It's hard to see it, but it's right in here. So we're going to clean that out with some chemicals. Hopefully. So I'm going to start with this electronics super HFE electronics cleaner and see how that works. It's not dissolving. Yeah, it's dissolving that grease pretty good. But I need to work it with something, so we'll see. Okay, so that cruddy stuff, I got as much off. I finally had to put, I hated to do it, some plain old WD-40 just to get in back on the back side of this sprocket without taking it out, the whole thing apart, which I did not want to do. And you can see there's WD-40 now inside there with the water, so we got to keep drying this thing as well. So still working on it. I think I may be using some deoxit on that metal part too, just to make sure there's no rust. All right, so what we're going to do is put some WD-40 spray and stay gel lubricant, and we're going to put that on first on this spring. Isn't that cool? And then we're going to put it on these mechanisms here. Right there. That should be enough lubrication that this thing will need. I thought about using model airplane, but I think this will do the job very nicely everywhere it needs to be done. Let's see, where's one? There's one there. Yeah, all of that needs it right in there. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll give it a shot here. It's not actually working like it should up here. But it's not inside the clock either, so it's not very stable. Let's see. Not sure where what's level either. Okay, that also. Well, we'll have to check and see. Well, actually, the spring was unwound and needed to be wound up. Now it seems to be working just fine. It's got a very quiet operation. There it is. Okay, so we're going to work on the face and then reassemble it. I need to wipe some of this excess off. Working just fine with the pendulum. Listen to that sound. So I'm going to go have some lunch and then work on the face and do some of the repairs to the other part of the clock. I mean the glass. Well, the face too. I need to spend a little time on too. Well, there it is in its place. Now, the balancing is very sensitive in getting perfectly level. But it's working. So this is Hallicrafters Rehabs. Wishing everyone a Merry Christmas.